Good morning, everybody. Appreciate you joining us this morning to talk about compliance and really trying to change the paradigm in compliance and try to get people to understand the value of it. Compliance historically has been a begrudging thing that people do, but it doesn't need to be that way, and it doesn't always have to deliver no value for you and only take away. So, little background on myself. My name's Dereck Jacques. I've been with Charles IT for a little over 11 years now, and I've kind of worked the gambit at Charles IT. I've been a tech, I've been a team lead account manager, worn a bunch of different hats, all of them touching compliance and working with compliance in a little bit of a different way. So I get that unique full spectrum view of how compliance is perceived and enacted in an organization. Back a few years ago, Charles IT got our SOC 2, SOC 2 Type 2, which was awesome. It was earlier when I was back in the account manager team lead, so I had a bit more context of what's going on. But when we came in, we were told it was going to be an advantage for us. We believed it, and it turned out to be, which was great. We've worked with a few other companies since then who have done similar, whether it's SOC 2 or CMMC or whatever it may be, who don't have that same kind of explanation as to why an organization is doing this. And we saw at a company that we support a few years ago where they needed to very, very quickly become SOC 2 Type 2 certified. They had won a really big contract and they needed to become certified in 30, 45 days, which if anybody knows SOC 2 is a really quick turnaround for that. It caused a really big disruption in their organization. So trying to touch on that a little bit today so compliance doesn't have to be a big disruption to your organization and making sure that everybody understands why and the purpose and the benefit that your organization is going to get out of it. Step one, compliance is not just an IT thing, right? The old school mentality is compliance, computers, all these things are the backroom closet of people who work in IT and it's their responsibility and nobody else's. Fun little side fact, the last job I worked at, they forgot to make us an office in the rebuild and they actually put us in a closet and that was our office, which didn't work out too well for us. But the reality of it is everybody in your organization needs to be bought into this initiative that you guys have to be compliant. Not just because you want them to not hate it or not resent it, but also because somebody in finance and somebody in accounting, somebody in IT, they can all cause you to fail your audits and your compliance just as easily as anybody else. Second, compliance is an investment. It is. Compliance is not cheap. It's not free. Some of them are more expensive. Some of them take more input than others, but it will give you an advantage. It's going to give you a better security posture right off the bat. No matter which one you're going for, there is that base of security that you're going to get out of it. Second is the overall respect, authority, presence you're going to get by having that and knowing that you have that and somebody coming in from the street and seeing you with that. It's also going to enable you to bring in more business and expand your organization as well. Number three, touched on a little bit, is managing your risk. These compliances are really built around trying to make sure that you are secure, your risk is mitigated as much as you possibly can. Nobody wants to lose personal information through HIPAA. Nobody wants to lose government information through CMMC. And even the more generic ones, NIST CSF, for example, is built to ensure that you have this framework to secure your organization so you're not leaving yourself vulnerable. So compliance, our new reality, right? So we saw a really big shift. Compliance and security have always been important. We saw a really big shift when COVID hit. And the big reason for that is a massive percentage of the world was working remotely that had never worked remotely before. And what's that mean? Attackers had a huge footprint to attack that they never had before. So we saw a huge uptick in ransomware and malware. And in reality, those came with increased insurance claims and items like that. So we've seen a lot of these compliances tighten up and apply a lot more governance to their compliance. Something like CMMC was born out of DFARS 171, which was a self-attestment set of rules that you had. And a lot of people weren't following it. They were attesting that they would, but they weren't, and we were getting breaches and losing government information. Similar with HIPAA, where it was a governance, and nobody was coming in every year to an HIPAA organization and saying, show me everything that you're doing and to prove to me that you are compliant. HIPAA right now is going through a transition where they are anticipating that is going to move in that direction, where you need an audit that is happening to prove and have a third party come in and say, yes, they are actually following these rules. So with insurance companies getting tired of paying out huge sums of money for people who are getting ransomware, people are getting tired of they're losing their information. Organizations are getting tired of getting breached because of some relationship they have with somebody. It's another avenue that we see a lot of these things happen with, where you have a partner who is not following good practices, and they interact with your organization, and then all of a sudden something happens there, and then you end up getting the tail end of it because they get to you through somebody else who is not following the rules like they should have been. So, the cost of falling behind. I hear a lot of people tell me, I don't want to become compliant, it's too expensive, which is really a false economy, because it is not. It's an investment, like I mentioned in the beginning. It is not a direct cost for you to say, great, we're not going to do this. We don't need to be compliant. You can make that decision, some of us, but you're going to have repercussions to it, right? A few people in the last few years, right? Last year, United Healthcare got ransomware. An estimated $2.5 billion they lost. Merrick in 2017, about $1.7 billion through a malware attack. And also 2017, Equifax, $1.5 billion they lost in those attacks. The reality of it is, each one of those was different. Each one of those had different ways they got in. They have different ways they got taken over. So this isn't a go implement this tool and you'll be fine, or change this policy and you'll be good. These compliances are built to give you that framework of all the different facets of things that you need to do to make sure you stay within, mitigate your risk and stay within a safety zone. Reputation is a big piece of this as well, right? So when big breaches happen, when sensitive breaches happen, they make it out. And when you have something like a HIPAA compliance or a CMMC compliance, the governing bodies dictate you need to tell the public that this happened. You can't brush it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen and hope nobody knows about it. So when that happens, naturally people are going to think twice if you're going to go work with this organization that you know last year lost a whole bunch of personal information. And you're going to, A, probably lose existing clients, customers. B, you're going to slow down your pipeline of new business coming in and close a lot of doors for you, because people, again, think twice when you have that kind of tarnish on your record. Target was a really big one back probably about 10 years ago, where there was a big breach of credit card information, big breach of personal information that came out of it. They saw almost a 50% reduction in revenue over the following quarters because of that, which obviously is terrible. But as leaders in our organization, it's also alarming because they let go of all their leaders and replaced all their leaders as well, because they weren't doing the things that are expected to be done to keep their organization safe and protected in these cases. Insurance-wise, I mentioned they're getting tired of paying out. So I'm sure we've all seen those insurance questionnaires used to come in. There'd be 5 or 6 questions related to IT years ago. Now, sometimes there's pages of questions. They're almost a full audit of compliance in themselves just to get yourself cyber insurance. We've seen a lot of people get their insurance dropped by their carriers, people who just are applying and don't get granted insurance, or see their premiums go skyrocket up because they are answering no to some of these questions and they're not aligned to where they need to be from a risk mitigation standpoint. Business strategy, right? So number one, and I mentioned it in the beginning, this needs to be a cultural shift and change in your organization. It cannot be just your executives saying, everybody, this is the way it is, deal with it, we are doing this. People need to understand the why, right? They need to understand why the lowest level intern, entry level person you just hired on, they need to understand that the controls and the pieces we're putting in place are important and why they are important. If they think they're just being told rules and governance and that's the way it is, you get much less buy-in. The why behind this is clear, it's simple, it's easy, it makes sense. If you explain those things to people, most of the time you're gonna get that buy-in for it. And we need everybody contributing to it, like I mentioned in the beginning. That intern you hire for the summer very easily could cause you to have a massive HIPAA breach or miss your SOC 2 audit and compliance and getting that certification because they're not following those same rules because they don't feel like it's worth it or there's a reason behind it, right? Really, the best way to handle this, and a big problem that I mentioned in the beginning as well, is don't clump this together as one immediate initiative. We see this way too often where somebody comes and says, I want to get SOC 2 compliant. I want to get CMMC compliant. We'll do it in Q3 next year. Q3 comes around, they're like, great, let's go do it. You have so much to change, so much to do, so much culture shift to align to, it's never going to work for you. Those things need to be planned and spread out and done in a nice controlled manner if you want it to be successful because of multiple reasons. The cultural piece is huge because you're going to end up with riots on your hands of people who are upset about all the changes and the things that they didn't have to do before and they do have to do now, or the access they had before that they don't have now and they feel restricted, and you build a culture that just doesn't feel good. The other piece is financial. I mentioned this is an investment. All these things take some sort of time, money, effort to do. If you try to cram all that together, A, you're absorbing all of that investment in a single go. But B, a lot of times if you need to do that in an expedited fashion, it's going to cost you more across the board regardless. So spreading those things out is key for both of those aspects. Making yourself a differentiator is also a huge piece. In some cases, like HIPAA, your differentiation is you get to keep operating your organization and hopefully you don't end up in one of those breach situations and you keep your reputation clean where it is. Something like SOC 2 for us was important because it shows other organizations who are coming to start a relationship with us that we have some base set of controls and risk mitigation and pieces in place that are going to help reassure them that we aren't leaking out all their data or whatever the case may be. And those credentials are something we use and see in our day-to-day life everywhere. You walk into a doctor's office, you really hope that doctor has some sort of MD at the end of his name. You walk on a plane, you hope that pilot has a license. Those things are the things that help you build that comfort and build that respect for somebody that you don't know. And that's really where that differentiator piece for this kind of sales pipeline is going to help you tremendously. Walking in for CMMC, for example, having your CMMC certification early knows that when Pratt & Whitney or GE or one of those big prime government contract organizations come, they know that once all these things come to fruition and there is more crackdown and tighten down on it, they don't need to worry about your organization and whether or not you are going to get to the level you need to be to continue functioning in that industry. We are 48 CFR for CMMC, went into law a few weeks ago, which is going to see a lot of those controls and that CMMC compliance hit the government contract world. We're seeing a lot of people scramble now, and we're seeing a lot of people get a lot of pressure from those prime distributors and prime contractors who are now scrambling and saying, crap, we are working with all these people and all these subcontractors. We need to make sure they are up to snuff so we don't end up in a situation where data leaks from somebody we are working with and they are just as much as at fault as anybody else is in that scenario. Some quick wins you can take out of compliance, right? I mentioned, number one, map out your compliance goals and your outcome. So that is figuring out what you need to do to become compliant and saying, okay, great, quarter one, we're going to do these sets of things. It's going to have this amount of impact. It's going to have this amount of cost. You can budget for it. You can make sure you are doing it in a nice, structured, logical way. It reduces the impact on your organization, your employees. It reduces the impact on your business financially, and allows you to plan and be nice for it. The other piece to it is, in some of these other compliances, mapping the actual outcome of once you're done. So you go and you get your CMMC compliance, it opens that door to this whole extra list of contracts you can now go and bid on. You can use that as your outcome and your use case of, great, we are going to take the time, money, effort to go invest in this compliance, because at the end of it, we are going to recoup all the ROI on that, and we're going to set our business on a much higher trajectory than we had before. Two, we talked about already, prep quarterly, trying to make sure you are breaking those things into manageable chunks. A fun saying Foster usually has is, what's the best way to eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So the moral there is, it is a big initiative for a lot of people, especially people who have not taken it super seriously over the years, and you'll have some catch up to do. And again, doing that all at once is never going to be good for anybody. Using compliance in your sales initiatives, right? Like I mentioned, walking in and having those credentials up front, knowing that, hey, Charles IT is going to be a responsible partner to work with because they have these certifications, and they have proven that they are not just slinging around data and keeping their things unsecure. We can trust this organization that we are looking to partner with here. And four, board level reporting. And this one is a real nice kind of side nicety to these compliances. So something like I'll use CMMC again just because it's very topical in the industry right now, but you come out of that, or with your SOC 2, for example, you come out of that with a big report showing, hey, here, not only do they have this check mark, but here's exactly how they do everything. Here's exactly why they passed all these controls. You can hand that to an auditor. You can hand that to a new board member. You have this very nicely structured, very professional breakdown of your whole infrastructure and your processes and your procedures and how everything runs to be able to present to people. Takeaways, just kind of summing up, own the narrative. And again, that is top to bottom. It can't just be the C-level people. It can't be just your directors into why this is happening. If your organization doesn't understand why you're doing something, you are going to be fighting against them, and there's going to be friction all the time. So making sure you have a super nice, concise narrative of why we're doing this and the outcome you're getting out of it, and that everybody has a similar message that they are deploying across your organization. You don't want, we are doing this because of A, at your C level, and by the time it makes it down to your department manager, they're telling you it's because of D, right? And that's where your clear, concise messaging there really needs to be driven home and really needs to be accepted throughout your organization. Find leadership champions, right? So not just your messaging as well, but people who are looking to ensure you are staying in line with this, pushing for those initiatives, keeping people on track. It can't just be a compliance manager. It can't just be your IT department. It has to be holistically, and finding people within your organization that you can trust to help drive that forward and act as that leader for your compliance in each segment of your organization. Reduce risk, drive growth. Obviously, a lot of these compliances are geared towards reducing your risk, making sure that your cybersecurity is where it needs to be, making sure that you aren't going to be negligent and leak out data, cause exposures, potentially bring your own self down with some breach that takes out your own business, which is also a huge concern for a lot of people. And drive growth, like I talked about. You are using this as a differentiator. You are making sure it is known that you have these compliance certifications. You have these governances that are proving that you are doing the right things to be trustworthy to take on this business and partner with this business.